everyone and welcome back. It's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and today I'm back with another finished jewelry update to share with you some of the things that I've made during the month of March. Today you'll see some items that span from the Bargain Bead Box, Sam's Bead Box, the Stonehenge Ancient Ruins collection put together by Eureka Crystal Beads in partnership with Bronze Pony, the Potomac Beads Box, and some things from some recent tutorials. If you're wondering about any of these boxes or places that I'm mentioning in the video, I will try to leave links down below in the description section. And you can also find playlists for each of these companies, which will include the latest unboxings, sharing with you where these contents came from if you missed it. If you happen to be new here, first of all, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. These finished jewelry updates are something I like to come back and do regularly, so you can actually see some of these items that I unbox used and turned into actual finished jewelry, hopefully to maybe give you some inspiration or help spur on some new ideas for you. And it's just so fun to see what we've all made with the contents of subscription boxes where maybe the materials are something you or others have gotten, and it's amazing how many different things can be created and how we can all come up with different ideas. So starting with this first necklace, this is from the contents of the Bargain Bead Box, and that's the case for all the beads and those teardrop shaped gold findings and the pendant. And from my stash, I actually pulled a length of chain that I had on hand. I knew I wanted to do something similar to this with the beaded links hanging down from the chain, and the one provided for us in the box this month, I think the links were a little bit smaller, and also the gold was more yellow in tone. So knowing I wanted to use those teardrop findings and they had that little bit of a lighter shade, I just went ahead and pulled this chain. I'm sure it probably came from their sister store, Beadbox Bargains, at some point in time. But I started out by making the front of the necklace, taking a smaller segment of chain that I then connected to the teardrop components. Then I found the center and beaded the longer length of links that has 3 of those chevron beads, and then made some gradually shorter segments going to either side. So here's a peek at that up close. And when doing this type of necklace, if you're newer, something to keep in mind is just making sure you link onto the links that are going in the same direction. So you can see some of them are open and facing you and some are to the side. So I just tried to make sure I was linking to the same type, skipping one of them in between to space those out a little bit, and just used some 22 gauge wire, I believe it was, to create those links, and some ball head pins for the ones at the very bottom to finish those off. And then we also were provided with the 2 smaller teardrop components that match the pendant, so I definitely wanted to make this into a set and create a coordinating pair of earrings. So I just made sure to reserve 2 of the chevron beads. I did use 2 of the bicone shaped spacers that they provided underneath those, along with a single gold seed bead just to fill in the gap a little bit, and wire wrap those together. And since we had 2 additional open teardrop connectors, I included those as well to match the necklace. And then because I had an abundance of these chevron beads left over, I was able to make a coordinating bracelet for this set too. I used the bulk of them along the main part of the bracelet where you'd see it the most. And then to add a little bit of additional length, because I ran out of the chevron beads to do the full thing, I used some light gold colored spacer beads that I had in my stash already. You can see I also incorporated those gold bicones in between the chevron beads for the bracelet, and a small segment of chain there as an extender with one of them at the bottom as a decoration. And then finally at the back of the necklace, you can see that there is a toggle clasp there, finishing that off, which is something they provided for us in the subscription box also. And here's the next set from the Bargain Bead Box contents. I turned those green rounds and the agate stones into a 3-strand necklace pulled together with 2 3-loop chandelier components that I had already on hand, just to help separate out each of those 3 lengths of beads and just completed one a little bit shorter than the next. I thought with this one it'd be fun to do a separation of the colors. especially with the Art Deco theme that this box was based around. So not only did I do the graduated lengths, but also graduated amounts of the green beads that would hit in the center of the necklace, getting slightly wider as you go to the bottom, and did the same with the agate beads a little bit, playing around with those strands before I did any assembling of anything, just to get the idea laid out first. And then I strung all the beads on the 3 strands, and even before securing those on the connectors, laying those all out on the bead mat and making sure the lengths would hit where I was hoping for them to. At the back of this necklace, I just finished that off with some more of the same chain I used in the previous necklace. And I think the only other thing I didn't mention was that you can see some of those gold spacer beads spacing out the sections between the green and the black. And then because I had additional beads that would coordinate, I pulled in more of those green rounds and some of the crystal rondelles in the black and gold and some more of those spacers, and had enough to do 2 strands. So I was looking through my stash and found this gorgeous magnetic clasp, I believe is by Tiara Cast. I hope I'm not wrong on that, with its rectangular shape and antique golden detail, which brings out some of that darker sort of black on the clasp itself too. And I like how it coordinates with the connectors on the necklace pretty well. And then this necklace is also finished up with a lobster clasp, a segment of chain for an extender, and I pulled in a black bead I had in my bead soup container that coordinates to use as an accent. In addition to this set, I have one more necklace set to show you from the bargain bead box. And in that box, we had received the black onyx and brass pendant and the 2 smaller pieces that coordinated really well together. So that one inspired me to create another set. I also pulled in that electroplated hematite with the faceting. Those are the smaller faceted round beads in this piece. You'll also see some of the crystal rondelles that were part black and part gold, and the larger crystal faceted barrel beads. On either side of those, I used some bead caps that they had sent in a previous month, and those had a little bit of pliability, so I was able to kind of take them and bend them slightly around those crystal barrels to fit even better. And then I just used some of the round gold spacer beads that I had already on hand. So this is really simple, and I didn't do anything extra special with the bail area. It's just attached there with a jump ring. But I may change that up and do some type of a bead woven bail or something, because I'd love to give that area a little bit more detail. And then here are the really simple coordinating earrings that I put with the necklace using those smaller onyx drops and 2 more of those crystal barrels with the bead caps bent slightly into place. I didn't have quite enough of the hematite rounds to finish off the length of the necklace, but that's okay. I just used more of those gold round spacers to finish out the area in the back. Finally, just finished it off with a lobster clasp that I had on hand and another segment of chain used as an extender, with 1 more of those little hematite faceted rounds at the bottom as an extra detail. And then switching gears a little bit, my next set comes from the contents of the March Sam's bead box, which had that really unique theme called The Beauty of Time, and we had a lot of copper and different shades of green and some verdigris components, lots of coordinating checked glass and stones and all sorts of things. And one of my favorites that they included this month were those lentils with the additional finish, but how they pick up that minty green while also having that more antique look with the warm neutral speckles all over the surface. And they can be kind of a challenge to work with if you're not really sure what to do with them, but one thing you can do is add them to a small segment of chain like you would some drop beads and create these clusters, sort of like this. You can, of course, string them and they would just hang down a little bit lower than some of your beads, just to give you another example. But I really like the movement that these provide and how they kind of come together in a cluster. And when I started playing with the contents, I just loved how these check glass table cut beads with that diamond shape in the center Their beautiful mint color picks up those small striations of minty green that are in those lentils, while also playing off those more neutral spots with the finish that frames out the table cut bead. So my first mission was to use those two types of beads together. I first created the little clusters using the lentil beads, and those are attached to a segment of chain that I had on hand. And I can show you that on this example in the earring a little bit closer. The earrings are actually the exact same as the pendant, except for those earring findings added to the top. So here I used a segment of chain with 3 links. I have 1 lentil attached to the very bottom link, and they're all attached using a 4mm jump ring. I have 2, one on either side of the middle link, and then I have 2, one on either side of the top link. So that's how I created those little clusters using 5 lentils. And then just wire wrapped these table cut beads onto a length of wire that I had on hand. Added one of the copper rounds that came in the box, actually used as a spacer in between the strand of leaves, but I liked that extra detail on the top, and pulled those all together. Since we had 3 of these table cut beads, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to make a set doing a pair of earrings and a necklace. So after I had all 3 of those done, I had the one left over to use as a pendant, and I created a simple strung necklace using more of the beads that came in that box to accent the pendant on either side. So in this necklace, I used some copper colored soft flex beading wire. And you can kind of see that in those minty green and crystal beads since those are a bit see-through. I also pulled in some of the check glass discs in that sort of amber and brown combination. And I used the additional copper round beads that I incorporated on the top of those components and just pulled in some really tiny antique copper colored spacer beads that I already had on hand to space out some of those sections. And finally, there's a look at the necklace off of the display. Just used another lobster clasp with the addition of a chain for the extender and another bead that was used in the necklace design to accent that at the bottom. Early last month, I also had the pleasure of sharing the collection that was put together by Stephanie of Bronze Pony and Eureka Crystal Beads called Stonehenge Ancient Ruins. So these materials all came from that collection, those being something I always look forward to working with, since bead weaving is really my favorite and also coming up with new things. So the very first thing I did was actually come up with the pendant itself. And that's a bezel that I came up with to fit around the 16mm cushion cut crystal stone. But of course, we also had the smaller cushion cut crystals, a set of 2, that were included. So I had to make a coordinating pair of earrings for it also. And this is a tutorial that will be coming in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. Here's a peek at this pendant up close. And what I really love is the inclusion of the pearls that go all around the side. So I used the Nibbit 2-hole beads, of course, to frame out the corners of that cushion cut stone. But then with the addition of the smaller pearls that were included, I really liked how that brought together the pendant and the larger pearls used in the actual necklace itself. I pulled in one of these crystals that came in a color that coordinated so well with the cushion cut, and then I just added a couple of those going up the length of the necklace itself, and then the addition of a couple of green fire polish beads just to bring out some of the green that we find on the Nibbit beads. And here are the coordinating earrings, just done in a smaller version, still having the pearls on the sides and the Nibbit beads. And for these, I used a pearl accent at the top. Also used the ear wires that came along with the collection, and 2 different sizes of seed beads, just like in the necklace. So down below, you'll find a link to that collection at Eureka Crystal Beads, but keep in mind, if it has sold out, you can still find all those items listed out on the collection page, and you can purchase these items separately, which you might want to do if you weren't able to get your hands on that collection and would like to make this particular set. And finally, I shared 3 new bracelet designs this month in the form of video tutorials. And here is the first one. This is the silky lace bracelet using the silky 2-hole beads and the seed beads that came from the Beads to Live By subscriptions. So just another way to pull those together along with some 4mm fire polish beads. I think I'd like to try it using a different color of the seed beads to frame out the silky beads and accent those a little bit more, so you can have fun with that option too. And I had reworked these a little bit since I last shared them in the previous finished jewelry update, so that's why I was bringing those back in, because those were tweaked a little bit and this ended up being the final product. Up next are these crystal cup chain bracelets. The pink one you saw in the previous finished jewelry update, but came back with 2 other color varieties, which I created once I tweaked the process a little bit more before I came out with the tutorial. That pink variety, though, of course, coming from the contents of the Sweet Romance collection by Eureka Crystal Beads. And these having a lot of flexibility and sparkle also, while keeping that crystal cup chain intact, and then the use of the Tila beads there at the bottom. And then the final 2 bracelets I have are from the latest tutorial that I shared. These are called the Archipelago Pi Duo bracelets, which the blue variety comes directly from the contents of the Potomac Beads subscription box, and the purple variety is using some alternate beads that I already had on hand. I finished up these bracelets with a button clasp, so you'll see how I did that in the tutorial video. And they're one of those really versatile designs where you can use each of these tile components separately in all different ways, not just linking them together like this for a bracelet, but using 2 to make a simple pair of earrings, putting them together differently to make a necklace. And the other thing is you can adjust the length of these bracelets by simply changing out the size bead that you use in between your components. So it's a pretty versatile design and also has that open and airy feel. And besides the Pi Duo beads, they use pretty common materials like the 3x2 crystal rondelles and 11/0 seed beads. So you can check out those tutorials in my tutorial playlist if you missed any of those. And of course, I have a lot more planned to come. So that's everything I have to share with you this time around. I hope you enjoyed checking out some finished pieces from recent bead boxes, and I hope you'll join me again for more. If you have anything that stands out as a favorite to you, feel free to share with me in the comments below, or anything else you'd like to say. It's always great to hear from you. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe to my channel because I do have more in the works to come. And before you know it, it'll be time for the April bead boxes to start rolling in. If you enjoyed this video, and if you found that it inspired you even just a tiny bit, feel free to give it a big thumbs up and also share the video with your other beading friends. That wraps it up for now. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, happy beading!